This is the worst case I've ever seen.
Oh my God! You gutted him like a fish in that apartment too. You were relentless. You stabbed, you stabbed, you stabbed, you stabbed, you stabbed until he was dead.
My name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people with an AR-15 and a couple tracer rounds. I can do a good job. You're all going to die.
The day started like any other school morning, but by the time the final bell rang, one student was dead, 3 others were wounded, and an entire community would never be the same. Caleb Sharp. On September 13, 2017, 15-year-old Caleb Sharp boarded a school bus headed to Freeman High School in Washington. But inside his duffel bag wasn't homework. There was an AR-15 rifle, a handgun, and boxes of ammunition. Therefore, what followed wasn't an accident, it was a decision. Sharp walked straight to a second-floor hallway, dropped the bag, and tried to load the rifle. The gun jammed.
Oh my God!
When fellow student Sam Strahan approached him and warned him to stop, Sharp pulled out the handgun instead. One shot hit Sam in the stomach. Another hit him in the face. Sam didn't survive. Sharp kept walking. 3 teenage girls, Emma Neese, Gracie Jensen, and another student, were shot as they tried to escape.
I started running and was so scared because I felt like I was running in slow motion. I began thinking, there's absolutely no way I'm getting out of this.
Gracie would later say,
As I lay there, I watched him walk by me with the most emotionless face I've ever seen, shooting at my classmates as they ran in fear of their lives into classrooms.
The fact that Gracie survived is remarkable. The fact that she can walk is a miracle.
but the shooting ended when a custodian confronted Sharp. He dropped the gun, raised his hands, and surrendered. 5 years later, in a Spokane County courtroom, Sharp finally spoke.
I'm sorry to every single person I forced PTSD upon. I'm sorry to all the people who can't go out in public anymore.
But his apology came after years of silence. For Sam's mother, Ami Strahan, it meant nothing. "You took my son in the worst way possible," she told him. "You ruined my life." Sharp's defense asked for 20 years, citing youth and immaturity, but the judge didn't agree. Therefore, Sharp was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison, with parole eligibility no earlier than age 55. Justice was delivered, but for the families and survivors, the sentence didn't bring peace. It only marked the end of the courtroom chapter in a story that will never truly be over.
My name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people with an AR-15 and a couple tracer rounds. I think I can do a good done. You're all going to die. Pew, 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 pew.
Nicholas Cruz. On February 14th, 2018, Valentine's Day, Nicholas Cruz walked onto the campus of Marjorie Stoneward Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. He was 19 years old, a former student, expelled, angry. But he wasn't empty-handed. Cruz carried a legally purchased AR-15 style rifle, ammunition, and tactical gear. At 2:22 p.m., just before dismissal, he entered a school building and opened fire. The attack lasted about 6 minutes, but in those 6 minutes, 17 people were killed, 14 students and 3 staff members. Others were wounded while trying to save classmates. Some died shielding children that weren't their own. Cruz pulled the fire alarm. It wasn't to help, it was to draw people into the hallways. When the shooting stopped, Cruz didn't flee in panic. He dropped his weapon, blended in with students running for their lives, walked to a Walmart, grabbed food at Subway, sat in McDonald's, but was arrested roughly 80 minutes later in Coral Springs.
What's going on today, bro?
The demons, man.
Demons?
The voices.
This became the deadliest high school shooting in U.S. history. But the violence didn't end with the gunfire. The Broward County Sheriff's Office faced fierce criticism for waiting outside the school instead of confronting the shooter, and for failing to act on repeated warnings. In court, Cruz initially showed no remorse, at one point even laughing. Years later, during sentencing, he apologized.
And I love you, and I know you don't believe me, but I have to live with this every day, and it brings me nightmares, and I can't live with myself sometimes. But I try to push through because I know that's what you guys would want me to do.
The prosecution sought the death penalty, but the jury wasn't unanimous. In October 2022, they recommended life without parole, and in November, the judge made it official. Cruz will never walk free again, but his actions reshaped laws, sparked March for Our Lives, and left a permanent scar on a generation that grew up learning the warning signs too late.
T.J. Lane. On the morning of February 27, 2012, students at Chardon High School in Ohio gathered in the cafeteria before class. Within minutes, that cafeteria turned into chaos. 17-year-old T.J. Lane entered the school carrying a handgun. His original target was someone he believed was a romantic rival. But instead of confronting one person, Lane opened fire. Students ran in every direction. Some hid under tables. Others collapsed onto the floor. When the gunfire stopped, 3 students were dead. 3 more were seriously wounded. Lane was arrested shortly afterward. The evidence was overwhelming. There was no dispute over guilt, but the real shock came inside the courtroom. Lane walked in wearing a button-down shirt. As the hearing began, he slowly unbuttoned it, revealing an undershirt with one word printed across the chest: killer. The same word he wore on the day of the shooting. As prosecutors pointed it out, Lane smirked. Then came the victim impact statements. Parents stood and spoke about the children they would never see again.
He is a very kind and loving. Why would you want to hurt him? You don't know kind. You're evil.
They described empty bedrooms, unanswered text messages, graduations that would never happen. Lane laughed. At one point, he leaned forward and told a grieving father that he should pull the trigger on him, mocking the murder of his son.
Saying pull the trigger to kill your son, masturbates to memory of you.
The judge called Lane's actions heinous, unprovoked, and senseless. His sentence was 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Lane showed no reaction, and somehow, this was only the beginning. Ethan Crumbley. On November 30th, 2021, at Oxford High School in Michigan, 15-year-old Ethan Crumbley walked into a bathroom carrying a loaded 9mm handgun. He stayed inside for about a minute, but when he came out, the hallway was full of students changing classes. At 12:51 p.m., Crumbley opened fire. He didn't rush. He didn't hesitate either. Surveillance footage shows him walking methodically down the hallway, shooting at students and into classrooms as people ran for their lives. Teachers locked doors. Students barricaded themselves. Some hid in bathroom stalls, listening to footsteps and the sound of a gun being cocked just outside. 4 students were killed. 7 others were injured, including a teacher. But the damage went far beyond the gunshots. Police received nearly 100 emergency calls within minutes. Before chaos could spread further, school resource officers confronted Crumbley. He surrendered without resistance, still armed with ammunition left in the gun. The entire attack lasted about 5 minutes. 32 shell casings were found. Later, Crumbley admitted everything. He confessed that the gun came from an unlocked container at home, but he went further, telling investigators he had given his father money to buy it. That statement would change everything.
Prosecutors charged Crumbly as an adult with 24 crimes, including murder and terrorism. In court, he showed little emotion as he pleaded guilty, naming each victim out loud.
Is it true that while inside the boys' bathroom, in the stall of the bathroom, you removed the handgun from your backpack?
Yes.
Is it true that you ensured that the handgun was loaded?
Yes.
Is it true that you exited the bathroom approximately 12:51 p.m. on November the 30th, 2021?
Yes.
Is it true that when you exited the bathroom, you began shooting at students and staff members of the Oxford High School?
Yes.
Life without parole, plus an additional 24 years. The case didn't end with him. His parents, Jennifer and James Crumbly, were charged with involuntary manslaughter for failing to secure the weapon. They skipped their arraignment. A nationwide manhunt ended with their arrest in Detroit. In 2024, both were convicted and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Families also filed lawsuits against the school district, pointing to warning signs that were missed. But by then, the warning signs had become memories, and the memories had become grief. At Oxford High School, students survived because doors were locked, windows were covered, and seconds mattered. 4 students never made it home. And for an entire community, November 30th will never be just another date on the calendar again.